It was Christmas Day, and Stephen Clarke sat in his accustomed corner of the old church of Stretfield. He was the church warden, and the most highly respected man in the whole parish. Everyone had a good word for Stephen, who was a bachelor and lived alone in a cosy little cottage close to the church. His brother Philip, a good-for-nothing fellow who had quarrelled with Stephen when they were both young, lived at the other end of the village with his sickly wife and his two little girls, Mattie and Molly. Stephen had made up the quarrel long ago, but he did not care to see much of poor Philip, who was no credit to anyone and certainly not a relation to be proud of. Stephen loved the old church and was never so happy as when he was inside its walls, and as he sat there that Christmas morning, hale and strong and well-to-do, and harassed by no cares of wife or children, there was no more contented man in Stretfield than Stephen Clarke. Poor Mattie and Molly sat near to him. The children were alone, as Philip had not been inside a church for years, and his hard-working wife maintained that she had no time to come and no fit clothes to come in. And as Stephen looked at the wistful little faces, he felt glad that, beyond his handsome annual present to them, he was not troubled with unfortunate Philip and his delicate wife and children. The church felt very warm and comfortable on coming in out of the sharp, frosty air, and Stephen Clarke was becoming conscious of a pleasant drowsiness, when suddenly he was surprised to see that the chancel was filled with a choir of white-robed angels, instead of with the ordinary surpliced schoolchildren. And as for the music, it was far more beautiful than anything he had ever heard in his life before. "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." So sang the angel chorus, and the wonderful strains seemed to lift the arching roof and to ascend right up to heaven. Stephen felt that he must join in this glorious Christmas carol, so he also raised his voice, as was his wont in the house of God. But alas, great was his surprise and horror to hear himself singing, "Glory to Stephen Clarke, and on earth ease, disdain toward men." The angels all looked round to see what mortal had thus dared to mar their heavenly melody, and poor Stephen was ready to sink through the floor for very shame and confusion. He could not imagine what had possessed him to do such a thing, as he had intended to sing the same words that the angels were singing. Then he perceived that one of the choir was standing beside him, and whilst he gazed in silent awe, the angel said, "What dost thou here, Stephen? The song that thou art singing is not fit for angel ears." "Oh, sir," cried Stephen in anguish, "pray tell me why such words came out of my lips. Why cannot I sing your Christmas carol?" "Because thou hast not learned it, Stephen. Glory to God has never been thy theme." Clarke regarded the angel with amazement. "Pardon me, sir," he said, "but how can you say that of me, who have devoted myself to the work of the church and the good of the parish from my youth up until now?" The angel smiled. "True," he answered, "thou hast graced the fold and guarded the flock, but thou didst it in order that men might speak well of thee and praise thee, and thou hast gained the desire of thine heart, for there is no man in Stretfield more beloved and respected than thyself. Glory to Stephen Clarke has been the theme of thy life, as it is the theme of thy carol this Christmas Day, but it is not a song that angels care to hear." Then Stephen's heart was heavy within him, for he felt the truth of every word that his companion uttered, and he knew that the calm angel eyes were piercing his very soul. After a moment he spoke again. "But pray tell me, great angel, why I likewise fail to sing aright the second part of the heavenly carol. I have ever been a peace-loving man, and to no living creature do I bear ill will." "It is ease that thou hast sought, not peace," answered the angel. "Thou hast not loved thy fellow men enough for their doings to trouble thee." "But I have given alms," said Stephen. "To be seen of men," replied the angel. "And I made friends with my brother Philip, though I'm sure his was the fault, not mine." "And thou didst let him alone," continued the angel, "because he was no credit to thee. And thou didst quieten thy conscience by a yearly gift to him out of thine abundance. And thou wert thankful that his sickly wife and children did not disturb the comfort of thy soul. Such doings earn the praise of men, Stephen, but they are far from the glory of God. As thou hast lived, so must thou sing, and thy singing is not such as angels love to listen to." Then Stephen was humbled to the dust before the angel, and as he was pondering in his heart what to say in order to appease the righteous wrath of his stern accuser, he opened his eyes and, behold, it was all a dream. He was sitting in his usual corner of the church, the surpliced choir boys were singing in their stalls, and Matty and Molly's thin little voices were joining in the Christmas carol. But though the dream passed away, its influence abode with Stephen Clarke, urging him to translate into practical realization the lesson he had been taught. When the service was over, he joined the two little girls to their great surprise and walked home with them. His brother looked up in amazement as Stephen entered the poverty-stricken dwelling, and it was indeed awkward for the long-estranged church warden to explain the change which had come over him. But at length he succeeded, and presently, by a little loving persuasion, he brought back Philip and Philip's wife and children, and made them sit down with him to his comfortable Christmas dinner in his cosy cottage. Stephen Clarke never forgot that wonderful dream of his. He made up his mind that for the future he would seek the praise of God rather than the praise of men, and would strive to regard his neighbour, not with the easy tolerance of a selfish indifference, but with the love that beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. He and his brother renewed the boyish affection of bygone days, and with Stephen at his side to guide and encourage him, Philip became quite a respectable member of society. The careworn wife grew brighter and stronger in these happier circumstances, while Matty and Molly were the light of their uncle's eyes and the joy of his old age. On the next Christmas Day, when Stephen Clarke stood up in his old corner of the church, surrounded by his brother and his brother's family, he felt that now he might sing from his heart, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." And this time his carol was one that the angels loved to listen to.